Denver Mayor Michael Hancock makes his re-election campaign official tonight. Mayor, thank you for coming back to Next.
Absolutely, Kyle. Good to be with you.
Are you 100% committed to the idea of Denver having supervised drug injection sites?
Not necessarily. I'll tell you that what we did was to make sure that we remained at the table as the administration to get some of the values we believe that should be inherent in such a bill that is counterintuitive for all of us. But the reality is we are facing a major epidemic. People are very sick in our city, and we're going to have to think real creatively and use all the tools we possibly can to try to address this issue. We have not found a best practice anywhere in the country or any city and around the world that's been successful in dealing with this issue.
When I read what you've said about supervised injection sites, it sounds less to me like you think this will work and more that you're saying, I don't see anything else working, so why not try it? Is that a fair way to describe it?
That's exactly a great way to describe it. It's keep the toolbox active, which we believe has been successful in a lot of things we've tried to address in Denver. Make sure you have various tools available with you. But as you point out, and I think a lot of other people have pointed out, there are a lot of legal, community, regulatory, and civic hurdles that have to be overcome before a site like that is opened up in Denver.
Where do you get the sense that the public is on this issue? It raced through City Council.
Right. Well, I've had some conversations, and I get the mix of responses. A lot of people, what I expect, will say, what? You would allow a place where people can legally go shoot up? And then other people going, you know what? It is a serious problem. We got to find something to help these people. One of the things that I felt should be inherent in this type of move was to make sure that treatment and access to treatment was available when they walk through those doors.
Are people actually going in there for treatment? They're going in there to get high.
They're going in to get high.
The centers are keeping them alive for another day, but they're not getting them anywhere closer to a rehab situation or recovery situation.
Well, you know what? Inherent in the values that I put in there was to make sure they have access to services. But here's something we should understand, Kyle, and the public should understand. 80% of the overdoses occur in private residences. They don't occur on your streets. The reality is that we're going to be hard-pressed to reach people anyway. This is just one of the tools in the box that we're looking at.
Last question about that. When you mentioned that these overdoses, most of them happen in private residences, despite some of the fear-mongering we've heard, these supervised injection sites are not going to get stuck in suburban neighborhoods. They tend to go into areas where there is already open-air drug use. And don't take this the wrong way. When I think of open-air drug use in the city of Denver, I think of the front steps of City Hall and Civic Center Park.
Yes.
So are you open to the idea of putting a supervised drug injection site next to City Hall? That's where people are using.
You know what? We're going to have to consider all things, but here's the reality. We're going to be hard-pressed to place them anywhere. Whether I want to try to put them at City Hall or I want to put them in, a neighborhood around Denver, the reality is the public's going to weigh in on this. And my guess is that you're going to have some very, very strong opinions. We have, 6 years ago, announced that we wanted to create a solution center where chronically homeless could walk in, get emergency services, get access to treatment, brief or temporary shelter, and I'm telling you, it's taken us 6 years to get 7 years to get over the hurdle of community NIMBY because people are concerned about who we're talking about, and so we got to work through those things. This is going to be a very uphill battle for anyone who tries to open up this type of center.
Broader question.
Yeah.
So if the city of Denver has legalized marijuana, gets supervised heroin injection sites, might legalize psychedelic mushrooms, do we risk getting a reputation as America's drug paradise? Does that concern you?
Absolutely. We don't want that reputation. One of the things that, as we went to recreational marijuana, and we researched it greatly, and we traveled to Amsterdam, we looked at what happened in Amsterdam, and they say, listen, we're looking at you because we never legalized it here. But one of the things that the mayor of Amsterdam said to me, he says, you do everything you can. You fight like hell, make sure you don't get the reputation as the dope city, our dope capital of the nation, because you never get that back. And Amsterdam is fighting, spending a lot of resources right now trying to change their perception that people have of them. It's hard. It's not going to happen, so we have worked very hard not to get that reputation.
Do you support the idea of legalizing psychedelic mushrooms?
No.
You don't?
No.
Okay. So you have more established challengers to your re-election this time than you did 4 years ago. Do you think that speaks to growing discontent with your leadership?
I think it speaks to the fact that my administration has been here for 8 years, and my administration has made some very difficult decisions. Many of those decisions have led us to a great place. We're the most economically vibrant city in the country right now, most desirable place on a lot of charts right now. This is an envy of many cities around the country. And people feed into that. They think they see vulnerability, they see weakness, which I don't believe exists right now. But we're going to run a positive campaign. We're going to tell the story of where we've come from and where we're going, and I feel confident in that.
So you have identified affordable housing as Denver's #1 challenge.
Yes.
Is it fair then for voters to judge you based primarily on whether you have succeeded or failing in addressing affordable housing in Denver?
I think we ought to look at it in a broader context, Kyle. How has the city responded to the unprecedented growth of this city? 100,000 people moving into the city in the last 10 years. My administration has led the way to create 6,000 affordable housing units. Not nearly enough, but now we committed over $300 million over the next 5 years, more than the state of Colorado altogether, to affordable housing. No city has had to respond to growth the way we have. It jumped on us so fast and so rapidly. At one point, we were growing 1,000 people per month into the city. But I got to tell you, we have responded appropriately. We've addressed a lot of the issues. Affordable housing is our #1 issue, but we're not going to build our way out of this. No city can build its way out of this. It's just too exponentially expensive. This is going to have to be a regional approach, but Denver's going to absolutely do its part. We are doing our part right now to bring as much to the market as we can with our resources.
Fair to say, though, that your administration has had some pretty big missteps when it comes to affordable housing. I remember you promising thousands of new units, and it was months before your people could tell us where those were. You lost control of 1/3 of the affordable housing in Green Valley Ranch through failures in that program. Those are big deals.
Absolutely, but you got to also understand there's a whole system that is responsible for protecting those units. It did take months for us to bring those units, or at least get that program up and running. We were not aware at the time of the legal hurdles we had to get over, and we dealt with them, and we were diligent in getting done. It took longer than we expected, but that's part of the bureaucratic legal process. Secondly, with regards to all of our income restricted housing, we're going to fight as hard as we can to retain those, to make sure they're back on the market. But the reality is that the whole system failed, from the state to the title companies, and we should have kept a keener eye on it, because once we got through it, we thought the title companies will maintain those covenants in front of buyers, secondary market, third markets, and it just didn't happen. We know better now. You have a much more informed and smarter market or system today than you did before then.
So to clarify, that's what you're talking about when you say the system. You're talking about the title companies and the buyers and so forth. You're not saying this city department didn't do its job.
Absolutely.
You're talking about outside the city.
I'm talking about the whole network that's supposed to, transfer property in the state of Colorado.
So as we wrap up here, I know you're keen to tie yourself to a lot of the things that make people feel great about living in Denver right now. Right. Booming economy and quality of living and so on and so forth. But let me ask you. We both know what's going wrong in Denver right now.
Absolutely.
The affordable housing crisis, persistent issues with homelessness. In terms of crime, the murder number that we saw last year is a number that we haven't seen in a long time. Do you deserve a share of the blame for that?
I think all of us as a city must recognize that across this country, crime, in particular, violent crime, has gone up. That cities that have grown, D.C., Portland, Seattle, Dallas, Austin, are all facing the crunch around growth and access to affordable housing, mobility and congestion. Every one of us are facing these issues. It's not just Denver. These are national issues. Homelessness, chronic homelessness, the opiate epidemic, methamphetamines, mental health deinstitutionalization have all impacted our ability to just address homelessness. If it was just shelter, Kyle, we would have solved this problem a long time ago. But the reality is we got very sick people on our streets, and we're moving exponentially to address it because we have to. The housing thing, let me just hit that very quickly if I can. Housing is not a municipal function. We are forced into this because of the exponential growth that we've seen, unprecedented growth levels. I think as a city, because we didn't have the framework to address housing the way we have to, I think we moved pretty quickly to get into a place and say, you know what, we got to do this. And what people don't talk about is my administration was the first one to begin to allocate general fund money to affordable housing. And we started that in 2013. It didn't happen with the flashpoint of, the Inc. coffee place. It started in 2013 when we saw this beginning to happen, and I started allocating general fund money as we were emerging from the recession. So this is an administration that has always paid attention to these metrics and reacted and proactively moved forward when we could.
And last question, a politics question. Are you going to a runoff for the first time in 8 years?
We could. We'll be ready, though. Whatever happens, we're going to be ready.
Mayor Hancock, look forward to seeing you for our next conversation.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.